Kris, if I can start with you, how excited were you by that Loretta Lynch statement?
Monday was a historic moment for the transgender movement. The federal government made clear that discrimination against transgender people will not stand. And as I watched the Attorney General speak on Monday, I thought about all of the transgender leaders, particularly transgender women of color who have fought for our rights, whose work brought us to this moment, and who are no longer with us because of hate and violence. As a transgender man myself, as someone who, when I was born, the doctor said I was a girl, but I've always known myself to be a man, and I've lived most of my life as a man. As a transgender person of color, I have rarely felt truly seen by the people and the systems that make up our government. And, Monday was a rare moment where I not only felt seen, but I felt that the federal government would join with us in this battle against discrimination.
Right. Kerri, were you moved at all by the Attorney General's statement on Monday?
I was moved, but I was not moved in a positive way. As both an attorney and a woman, I was very concerned about the words coming from our nation's chief attorney. Yes, it's absolutely important to see everyone, as she said, absolutely. But the problem with her words is that she was ignoring and, quite frankly, marginalizing millions of women across this country who understandably and justifiably feel very concerned about the idea of allowing men into intimate settings like a women's locker room.
Right. And the Attorney General is taking, Kerri, using the Civil Rights Act to take action against North Carolina on precisely that point. And you think that's an abuse of the Civil Rights Act to do that?
I think it's an absolute abuse of the act for a number of reasons. For starters, the North Carolina privacy law is fully compliant with federal law. The Civil Rights Act protects against discrimination on the basis of sex, and sex means biological sex. Courts across the United States have uniformly said that that does not include gender identity or how one perceives their gender and sex. The plain meaning of the text says biological sex, the dictionary meaning, the legislative history, the sponsors of the bill said the same. In fact, the sponsors of one of the acts that the Department of Justice is suing under specifically said that this means that facilities can still maintain sex-specific facilities. And the other thing I'd like to point out is there is a real irony here. These laws, the Civil Rights Act and protecting against sex discrimination in the 60s and 70s came as a result of combating sex discrimination against women. Women weren't getting a fair shake in employment and in housing. But what's ironic is that these same laws that were designed to protect women are now being used against women and telling women that regardless of how they feel, regardless of what their feelings and their concerns are, they must let men into their locker rooms. And so yet again, we're seeing men's interests trump women's.
Kris, hold the discussion on the bathroom policy for a moment. We'll come to that. I just wonder what you think about using the Civil Rights Act for the transgender movement, because clearly that wasn't what was in the mind of those who drafted that act back in the 1960s.
I mean, it's very straightforward. Transgender people are protected from discrimination under sex discrimination law. We are protected from discrimination in employment under Title VII. Transgender students are protected from discrimination under Title IX. And, in 2012, in fact, the Transgender Law Center won the case that made very clear that transgender people are protected from employment discrimination under our civil rights law. What the Attorney General did is simply reaffirm existing law.
Right. Let me just ask you, Kerri, I mean, you can't see Kris, he's in that other studio, but what is your problem with Kris going into a men's bathroom? Because I think most people looking at Kris would say it would be a bit odd. It wouldn't be common sense for him to come into a women's bathroom, which is what the North Carolina forces him to do.
What the North Carolina forces people to do is undress in the presence of those of the opposite biological sex. And this is a fundamental right to privacy. I mean, everyone deserves a right to privacy. I think we can agree to that. And what this law does is strip that right of privacy from women, from children, from men who understandably and justifiably feel concerned about the idea of undressing in front of a biological man. And I think it's really not what about Kris wants or what I want, but what's best for the millions of people across this country who have concerns. And those concerns should be recognized.
Okay.
These people shouldn't be slandered or
Kris,
attacked, but they should be recognized and addressed as valid.
Kris, do you want to answer that point?
As a transgender person myself, safety and privacy are important issues. The reality is transgender people face disproportionate rates of violence and harassment. The reality is that there are already laws in place in North Carolina, as is true across the country, to protect women, children, anyone from facing harm in bathrooms. The reality of the North Carolina law is that it actually opens the door for harassment, not just against transgender people, but against anyone who looks a little different, against anyone who doesn't meet kind of stereotypes of what a man or a woman should look like.
Just a quick one. Kerri, do you accept transgender people as equal and deserve full protection against discrimination at work, at college, in housing, and all these different areas?
Discrimination and bullying should never be tolerated. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a fundamental common sense right to bodily privacy. We're talking about millions of American women, girls, boys who understandably don't feel comfortable getting undressed in the presence of biological sex.
Kerri, was it really a problem in North Carolina before they passed the bill? Were millions of men and women around America saying, oh my goodness, my life is ruined because my right to bodily privacy is being undermined by transgender people using my bathroom?
That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is opening bathrooms and locker rooms to whoever wants to come in. You know, someone can walk in and say, I identify as such, therefore they can go in. That opens the door to those who would abuse those laws to gain access to the people inside for bad reasons. So right now, as a woman, if a man enters the locker room, I can get the manager. I can say, hey, sir, you don't belong here. But now, if we open our locker rooms and our restrooms, I can't say anything until something actually happens to me.
We need to leave it there.
This is not,
Kerri,
this is not about transgender people. This is about
Kris,
a fundamental right to privacy for everybody.
Kris, Kerri, thank you.